cut open alveolar sac, cut open. Here's closed sacs. Here's a couple sacs with capillary beds on them, and then all the kind of connecting points above. All right? Now, let's work backwards, because that's probably the smartest way to do it. This whole thing is called an alveolar sac. See, the whole thing is a sac. See the arrows pointing this way and this way? This is a sac. Here's an alveolar sac. That's the end. An alveolar sac is made up of multiple of these bubbles known as alveoli. Each one of these round grapes or bubbles, it's an open chamber, each one of them is an alveolus. As a group, they're known as alveoli. And a cluster of them is the sac. The sac, meaning multiple alveoli, is supplied by a tube. The tube that supplies the sac is called the alveolar duct. So where is the alveolar duct on here? Well, here's the opening of it, right down here in the center. That's the duct. And it travels up inside here, because this is one of our sacs. And so it travels up in there. The duct leads into, here it is, this branch known as the respiratory bronchiole. Respiratory bronchiole. Now the other thing to keep in mind in this picture, and that's where this differs, notice on this, on the respiratory, on the terminal, and on the bronchiole, the red smooth muscle wrapping around it. Do you see any blue cartilage on it? No, because the cartilage ends. See the blue cartilage as we get down, down, down? The cartilage ends, or should end, on the smaller bronchi, on the colored one. And then after the smaller bronchi, it's just smooth muscle. The bronchioles should be all smooth muscle. On this model, blue, the blue stuff represents some of the cartilage. And it ends, seems to end right about here. And if I look a little closer down onto there, but it seems to end right about here, where my ruler is. So, can we use that in our discussion? Well, if it ends here, from here up must be part of the bronchi, and from here down must be bronchioles. The last bronchi that have cartilage are called the smaller bronchi. So this here, and this here, and the one behind the blood vessel, because there's one coming down here, those must be smaller bronchi. Here's my, I just want to look closer at my glasses. Yeah, there's a little bit of blue right there, unfortunately. A little bit of blue there. If you look closely at this model, you're going to see that these little tiny branches coming off here, there's a little bit of blue on that one and a little bit of blue, and that's kind of unfortunate. Because if those things are the smaller bronchi, we're running out of room here for the rest of our tree. And that's why there's some confusion on this. as you go from place to place. So we need to set our names so that we know what we're doing for the test. That's why we're going to work from the bottom up. Alveolar sac, alveolar duct, there's the opening that runs up through here. And literally it is, it literally is within the cluster, and it ends there. And the next one up from that will be the respiratory. So when we get to here, when we get to the end of the cluster, we get up to here. These are the respiratory. The ones that are going into these ducts, these are where the respiratory would be. Okay, the respiratory. Further up from that, terminal. Now where on our model is terminal? If these are the respiratory leading up, I would even argue to say that these here, these little branches coming up, are probably respiratory. Now they have little blue on them, so we're kind of screwed now. That these here, which would be where the respiratory would come off, should be the terminal.
Are you talking about
Did they go backwards? No. The terminal. And then the main one, right, these should be terminal. The main one here should be the end of that tree. The small bronchi. So I've always presented this as a continuation of that. That ends with the small bronchi. This begins with the small bronchi. And then the branches of the small bronchi, these main ones, are the terminal. And then there's a terminal one hanging down here. And then the little branches coming off of the terminal, which is just on this one here, the little ones coming off, of the respiratory. And then within here, ending there, would be where your alveolar ducts would be. And then here's your sac. The unfortunate part is that there's cartilage here. And there's not supposed to be cartilage. So I don't know how to resolve that with you. I think it's helpful to know that this ends at the small bronchi and this begins at the small bronchi. This has your bronchioles. This has your bronchi. That makes it a lot easier to understand, I think.
Which one are you saying is the respiratory?
This is your small bronchi. These are your terminal. There's 1, 2, and behind the blood vessel 3. This one that has my ruler on it, that's a terminal. Here's
The
a
red
little
part.
terminal in the back.
The red part.
No, the red part is a blood vessel. This thing between the blood vessels. You have to look closely at it. You have to look at it later. And then this is the back side, right, of the alveolar sacs. And some people like to say that, you know, within these passageways here, right, these are the alveoli, within these passageways is where the alveolar ducts are. These are the ducts leading to the sacs. These are the ducts leading to the sacs. They're within here. So when they look on the back side, they say, okay, this is probably where the alveolar ducts are leading to. This is sac right here, sac right there, sac there. Here's a sac, there's a sac everywhere. Sac, sac, right? So you got to spend a little time with this. But we're going to go with our bronchi, our bronchioles, and we're going to disregard the cartilage. So what else is on here? Capillaries. Here you see oxygenated capillaries in red and deoxygenated capillaries in blue. Oxygenated, deoxygenated. Another important concept here are these red rubber bands surrounding the alveoli. These red rubber bands, I wish they would have made them a different color, are not these red capillaries. I know they're the same color, I know they look the same, but this is different than this. These are capillaries for, this is where the exchange, the air in here is going to give oxygen to these capillaries. That's where exchange takes place. Each alveolus is coated, wrapped in rubber bands. It really is. All right, I don't know if it has it here, but here it is. Elastic fibers, elastic protein fibers, rubber bands. And the only place now, again, this is where I call it. See the sac here? You see around the edge, it looks like peppermint stripes, little red things around the edge. Those are the elastic fibers. Because keep in mind, what's happening here? You breathe in, your lungs expand. Each one of these alveoli expand and fill with air like a balloon. And then, how do you get the air out? There's no muscle tissue here that's going to contract and squeeze it out. The rubber bands. When you stretch the rubber band, you exchange the gas, and then the rubber band goes, and air gets forced out. Elastic fibers, and these elastic fibers are critical, clinically critical, because it's these elastic fibers that get destroyed when you smoke. And when you destroy those elastic fibers, you end up with emphysema. You can get the air in, but you can't get it out because the elasticity is destroyed. The balloon can swell, but it doesn't go back. Emphysema. Here's a lymphatic vessel. I don't think we have one on our model. Now what about these blood vessels that are coming in here? I mean, what are these? I mean, do they have them here? They have one here. They have some vessels here. So let's talk about this. Let's kind of try to follow the pathway. This blood vessel coming in here branches, and it looks like it goes into, does it go into the capillaries? I guess it does. Okay, and this vessel here looks like it's coming out of the, does it come out of the capillaries and leaves? And I have to be honest with you. The back probably is a little better, where you can see it going into the capillaries and out of the capillaries. If these blood vessels are supplying the capillaries that cover the outside of the alveoli, what vessels do you think that these are?
Arterioles?
No, I mean, what the name of the vessels? What would the name of these be? Are these coming,
Pulmonary.
is this part of the pulmonary? Between heart and lung? Or are these blood vessels part of, it's kind of like the coronary circulation, part of the vessels that supply the living tissue of the lung?
Pulmonary.
Yeah, these are part of the pulmonary circuit. Right, so this one, is this bringing the blood into the lung or out of the lung?
Into.
Into, deoxygenated goes in, it goes away from the heart. This would be the pulmonary artery. It brings it, and you see it better here, it brings it to each alveolus, it gets oxygenated, and it comes out back to the heart, pulmonary vein.
Don't your lungs still need a blood supply though?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's kind of on here, these things that are drawn, but these are the two main areas. And I just want to represent what those were, but you see some stuff drawn on them. side here, and you
Yeah.
see a branch coming off in a lighter orange and a dark red, lighter orange, that's